Hi Devin, thank you for asking about my Kilimanjaro adventure. I would love to answer your questions. What inspired you to want to climb the mountain? There's a number of things that inspired me to want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. For one, I've thought about it for years. I took Swahili in college, 2 semesters, and that's the native language of East Africa in Tanzania and Kenya. And Mount Kilimanjaro straddles those two countries, just below the equator in Eastern Africa. So I was kind of familiar with the mountain for a long time. And after college, I became a hiker, and I started doing mountains around New England and getting to the top of them, and I thought it was really great. And as I was getting older, I kept thinking about Kilimanjaro. It's one of the 7 summits of the world, which means it's one of the highest peaks on all of the 7 continents. And it's also the tallest peak in Africa. It's the largest freestanding mountain in the world, which means that it wasn't formed by plate tectonics, where plates come together and form great ranges of mountains like the Himalayas. It's a volcano that formed this mountain. 3 volcanoes, actually. So I really wanted to do it. And also, my brother-in-law, Chris, he died of cancer back in December of 2015. And I was thinking, how could I honor him? And a few months later, in the summer of 2016, a friend of mine from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society contacted me and said, hey, we're doing this fundraiser. It's a really big deal. We're going to climb Kilimanjaro. And I just stopped dead in my tracks and I went, oh my gosh, that mountain's been on my list for years. So I agreed to do it, and I signed up and started training. How did you know what you needed for the climb? As far as what I needed for the climb, for equipment, I was given a list by our guide company. See, we paid this guide company, and they're the people that are responsible for getting us to the top. And they gave us a whole long list of gear that we would need, from the right kind of shirts and shoes and pants and so on, thermal layers underneath, gloves, hats, balaclavas, these things that cover your whole head except for just your eyes, the right backpack, hiking poles, and so on. And so we had a good list to go by. And we also had a local coach here in New England named Tom. Sherpa Tom is his nickname. And he was the one that taught us a lot about our gear and what we'd need. And he took us on a lot of training hikes throughout the White Mountains of New Hampshire and in other hikes around Massachusetts and New England. What kind of shape were you in before, and what sports did you play? So I was in okay shape before I started. I'm a runner. I try to run 3 days a week. I try to run Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do anywhere between 5 and 6 miles each of those days. And I try to do yoga once a week, and I try to do weights a few times a week, and then just be active. I'm not really playing any sports at the moment. I played soccer as a kid, and even in high school, and I did some pickup games, a few years back. But sadly, I don't really play any sports anymore. So I guess for me, running is my sport, and then hiking became my sport. Who taught you how to climb and prepare? So as I mentioned a little earlier, Sherpa Tom was assigned as our coach for the New England group. And there were 5 of us from New England that were all training to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And he's hiked all the 4,000 footers in New England and the White Mountains, and he's done lots and lots of hiking for his whole life. And he was amazing. He was such a great coach because he taught us about pacing ourselves, about listening to our bodies, about how to layer our gear. I remember going up into the White Mountains in January, and it was well below zero up there with cold, cold wind. It's snowing, and it's really frigid. And we had such great layers on. And I learned one thing, which kind of shocking to me anyway, is that when I got dressed in the morning, I put on all these layers until I was warm. And I said, okay, I'm warm, and I can be outside in 0 degrees and be warm. But then as soon as we started hiking, I'm sweating. I'm sweating so bad because I'm overheating. And I had to actually take off some of those layers to cool myself down, because when you sweat in the winter, you don't feel it as much because it evaporates off your skin so quickly. So you have to drink a lot more water than you think you need to if you were, say, sweating in the summertime. So Tom was a great, great coach and got us ready for Kilimanjaro. What were the steps you took to learn the equipment you needed? So again, we were given a list of the equipment we needed. Things like micro spikes that go on the bottom of our boots for when there's icy conditions. Gaiters, which wrap around your ankles and go underneath your boot to keep stuff out from inside. So, for example, you don't want dust in there and getting dirty. You definitely don't want snow and ice falling into your boot because it'll melt and then freeze later and you'll be really, really uncomfortable. Hiking poles, backpack. I had this special Camelback thing for drinking, and what it would be is this big pouch of water in my backpack with a tube that would run up to my shoulder, so I could just drink from it. So for the most part, Tom taught us a lot about the equipment, and a lot of it was just kind of trial and error. You know, you just use it. You use it in your backyard until it gets a little familiar, and then you go hiking with it somewhere safe and local, so you figure it out. How long did it take you to train and learn? I started training, and again, I was running already, so I was in good cardiovascular shape, but I started really training around September of 2016, and keep in mind we were going to Kilimanjaro in mid-March of 2017. So in all that time, what we were doing is hiking as much as we could. Some days would hike for 4 hours, some days would hike for 5 or 6 or 7 hours. The best way to train to hike is to go hike. And we always wanted to make sure that we had our big backpacks on that had at least 15 pounds in it, because that's what we'd have to carry on the mountain. You know, 15, 16, 17 pounds. So sometimes you just put water bottles in there, or you'd put just things inside your backpack during the training because you want to get used to that weight on your back. So that's how we trained, is just keep hiking, keep moving, and see how we feel. The thing is, we could train for every condition here in New England, except one: we can't train for the altitude. See, the highest mountain in New Hampshire, and really all of New England, is just over 6,000 feet, and Kilimanjaro is 19,341 feet, and it's just, you just can't train for altitude without being in altitude. And so that's always a big question mark, is will I be able to handle being up that high where the air is so thin? What research did you do on the mountain? Well, when I was in college, I took Swahili, so I knew some of the native language, and I was able to speak some of that when I got there. And I also learned that Kilimanjaro is actually the name of the three mountains. And these three mountains are comprised of volcanoes, and they date back hundreds of thousands of years ago to various eruptions. Kibo is the tallest mountain, and that's the one that people confuse and just call Kilimanjaro. But Kilimanjaro means the three mountains together, the whole range made up of these volcanoes. So I learned that one thing I learned before I went is that Kibo, the highest summit, is only a dormant volcano. It is not extinct. So that added a little element for me. I went, oh, so it's possible that this thing could erupt while I'm there. Really not likely, but yes, possible, because it's not extinct. What was the biggest mountain you climbed before, and do you feel you were prepared? The biggest mountain I ever climbed before Kilimanjaro was Mount Washington in New Hampshire, which is just over 6,200 feet high. And I've climbed that mountain, I think, 5 times now over the years. First time was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And it's a great mountain. It's really hard. It's uphill the whole way. You get everything from going through the trees to getting above the tree line to winds, much lower temperatures up top, and then just reaching and crawling your way to the very top when you have to pull yourself over some of the rocks. So it's a great experience. It's a great place to train. In some respects, yeah, I was ready for Kilimanjaro, but again, the altitude is the one thing that I just couldn't train for, that because where we live, there's just nothing's that high. If I was in Colorado, I guess I could go up to 12 or 13,000 feet on some of those mountains, but I didn't get the chance to until I went to Africa. Did you have a special diet? Here's the awesome thing. If you go and climb a mountain and hike for 6 or 7 or 8 hours, you can eat anything you want because you've burned so many calories. You can have like 2 cheeseburgers and pizza. It's all good. I wouldn't make a habit of that. But when I was at home and when I wasn't burning all those calories, I try to just eat a good diet most of the time. You know, I try to keep my carbohydrates at a good level, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of salt. I really don't drink soda. I drink a ton of water and no coffee, nothing with sugar in it. But for the most part, the diet is just, you know, being smart about it. A good balance. Vegetables, fruits, all the fruits and vegetables that I want. I could eat that anytime. And then just trying to mix in proteins and not too many carbohydrates just to keep myself in lean shape. Because any extra pounds that are on my body are pounds I have to carry up the mountain. So I want to make sure I'm running as optimal as I can. Did you face any obstacles you were not prepared for? There was an obstacle I wasn't prepared for, and that was the people. You know, we were thrown into a group. There were 5 of us from New England, but we were matched up with 6 or 7 people from California. And so sometimes not everybody gets along. And there was only like one person in the group that I didn't count on being around so much time, and you'd say like, "Oh boy, that was a little tough." So we have to deal with the personality conflicts because we are a family, whether we like it or not. And just like, you know, you guys may not always get along with everyone in your family, same thing. On the mountain, we are doing everything together. And I mean everything. We wake up at the crack of dawn at like 6 in the morning. We have breakfast together. We hike all day. We have lunch together. We hike all afternoon. We have dinner together. We have to, hey, turn your eyes because I have to go poop or pee. And there's nowhere to go. It's wide open. So you just have to give each other their dignity. And so that was a challenge that I hadn't thought about, was, you know, trying to get along with all these people. And then we had all these guides and porters along with us. It was this whole moving village that got us up that mountain. It wasn't just a few of us. It was a whole team that got us there camp by camp, because it takes 6 days to get to the top and 2 days to get back down. How long did it take you to complete the climb? I'll answer that again. It took us, once we got into Moshi, Tanzania, which is where we stayed the first night, the next day we were in town all day, and then the morning after that we left for Kilimanjaro. And we took the Lamosha route, which would take us 43 miles through the whole mountain. And so we went up the western slope, and and that took 6 days to eventually get to the summit. And what that does is it allows us to acclimate, because by the first night we were up just shy of 10,000 feet, and the second night we're at like 11,000 feet, and then we hike all the way up to 13,000 feet, and then 15,000 feet, and all of this is getting used to breathing. And it's so hard to breathe up there. If you want to know what it's like, go get a drinking straw that you know, like you put in your soda cups. Take a drinking straw and just breathe through it. It's no big deal if you're just sitting there. Then get up and try to run, just breathing through that straw. After a few seconds, it gets really, really hard because your body needs more air than it's getting. And the only way to do that is to slow down, because we can't get more oxygen up there. At 15,000 feet, there's about 1/2 of the air that's at sea level right now. So everything you're breathing right now, at 15,000 feet, 1/2. And then it gets lower and lower in great chunks the higher up you go, which is what makes this challenging and even dangerous. What was your toughest challenge while climbing? That, hands down, was the summit day. So when we went for the summit, we were starting at a base camp called Barafu Camp, which is about 15,000 feet in elevation. And we had got there about lunch that day, and we were supposed to rest all afternoon. We ate a dinner really early, like at 4:30 or 5, and then we were told to go to bed, because we were waking up at 11 p.m. that night to head for the summit. So when we wake up, it's completely dark. It's 11 o'clock at night. I can see the lights of Moshi down below. It looks like the way it looks out of an airplane window. And so we get our gear on. It's really, really cold up there. There's nothing, no trees. It's freezing. It's frigid cold. And I've got all my gear on. We ate a little something, and we had to put headlamps on and completely bundle up. And then we started for the summit. And it's going to take us about 7 hours or so to get up there from where we are, all through the dark. And so we just start walking, and picture this: you can only see maybe like 3 feet around you, just this glow from your own headlamp, and you can see the person in front of you and so on. And as we're going up, I feel okay at first, but then the altitude really starts to get to me, and I'm having a harder time breathing. And around 3:30 in the morning, I was dizzy, my body was weak, I just couldn't breathe. I'm breathing as deep as I can just to get enough air, just with every step. And we're going so slow. Pole pole, they say in Swahili. Pole pole, which means slow, because we have to. If you go any faster, you'll just pass out from not having enough air in your body. And at one point, about 3:30, I remember I dropped my glove as I was trying to fix something, and I bent over to pick it up, and I stood up and I went, I think I'm going to pass out. It was just the hardest thing I'd ever done. I had to adjust my underneath layer, so I had unzipped my winter shell, and I couldn't zip the zipper back up. I couldn't figure it out. And it's even, this is a big heavy shell made for doing extreme outdoor stuff. And it has two magnets in the two zipper parts. So they just go clunk and you pull it up. And it's super easy. It's the easiest zipper you've ever used. Except around 17,000 feet, I couldn't figure it out. And I realized it's my brain. My brain isn't functioning right. I'm not getting enough air. So I couldn't figure out the zipper. And one of our guides came over and had to help me. I felt like a 3-year-old trying to zip up his coat or something. And so that was just so hard. And I didn't think I was going to make it. At that point, I thought I'm going to have to turn around because it's so dark. But then something happened, and it was really amazing. It happened around 5:30 in the morning. I turned around behind me to look east, and the sky, which was completely black before, had this little band of purple. And then eventually the purple turned to a little bit of orange and a little bit of red, and I realized the sun is starting to come up. And I went, okay, if I could let me just make it to sunup. And at that point, we're just shy of Stella Point, which is 18,800 feet. And we're getting so close to Stella Point, and the sun breaks up through. We're well above the clouds. I took this picture that you can see here, and I went, I'm going to make it. That was the moment. This picture to me represents hope. This is when I said, I am going to make it. I still had another hour to go. But I knew when that sun came out, I felt warmed up. I could see where I was for the first time, and I knew I'd make it. We would pass marking where people had died. You know, someone who died just in 2015, a little stone was right there marking them. And I thought, oh my gosh, people die up here just from the altitude. They can't breathe. They can't get enough. And so that was one of those things that that I had to contend with as well. Not just, you know, the mental struggle, the physical struggle, but also the emotional one of seeing that other people have died here. And that was a really powerful moment for me. But when I saw that sun, I knew we were going to make it. And we did. We got to Stella Point. We took a little bit of a break. And the thing is, from Stella Point to Uhuru Peak is just around the rim of the volcano. And it doesn't look like much when you're standing there, but it's 500 vertical feet more higher, and it's about a half a mile walk. And that half a mile walk took us close to like 45 minutes to do. Now, if you were to go outside and go twice around a track at you know, your school or whatever, it shouldn't take you more than, you know, 10 minutes or so. And that took us 45 to go the same distance because there's so little air. But there's these glaciers, and you see all this incredible, you know, view that you'll just never see. There's no moss, there's no bugs, there's no birds, there's no animals, there's nothing, because nothing lives up there. We just aren't meant to be there. And it really felt like this almost spiritual experience for me. And finally, as we close in, I see the sign for the summit there in the distance. Maybe it's, you know, about a football field away. And we just get closer and closer, just up this slight incline at the very end. And I get within feet of it, and then there it is. I get to touch the sign that says, congratulations, you are at the roof of Africa, the summit, 19,341 feet. I can't breathe. I'm crying and laughing at the same time. And I just feel like, it's funny. I mean, I felt good about it, but it's one of the things that it would actually take a day or two to really sink in, because I'm so exhausted at that point. I've never done something so physically hard, so mentally hard, even emotionally hard. To get there, I took some pictures. I took pictures holding up my brother-in-law, Chris, who came with me to the top. There he is. I held this very photo up. I brought him up there with me and you know, dedicated my climb to him. I did a little video to thank people for donating. And then we were only there 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and they said, we got to get down because we have a long way to go. We still have to get back down the mountain. And one of the things you have to remember, when you're climbing a mountain, when you reach the summit, you're only halfway there. That's the halfway point. You have to get back home. If you use all your energy, all your strength to get to the summit and then die up there, that's no good. It doesn't help anyone. You have to be able to get down. You have to be smart enough to know your limits. And I was fortunate that day that we got to the top and also was able to get back down. And it was something I'll never forget. What physical event will you conquer next? My wife told me if, I've always told her, I said, you know, Kilimanjaro has called to me for a long time. And she said, if Mount Everest ever calls, I better hang up, because the only way I get to do Mount Everest is if we get a divorce first. And I don't want to do that. So I don't know what physical thing I'll do next. I'm looking at running a marathon because I've never done that, and it seems like a big challenge for me. I'm going to climb more mountains, definitely. I'll be going into the White Mountains of New Hampshire again because those are just great experiences. Every hike, every mountain is its own adventure, and I think that's one of the things I learned from this is that sometimes we have mountains that are placed in our path, and we have no choice, and other times we put those mountains there ourselves. And a mountain is really a metaphor. It could be anything. Your end of year tests are a mountain. Trying out for the school play or trying out for a sports team is a mountain. Dealing with a loss like a death in the family or the loss of a pet, that's a mountain. These are all mountains that we climb every day. And I think sometimes when you go tackle a physical one like Kilimanjaro or tons of other ones that are much smaller and manageable, when you look at that big challenge and you get to the top and get back down and you say, all right, I can do that. I can do other things too. And I think that's the big lesson of climbing these things. Did you have fun? The memory of it is more fun than the actual thing itself because it was a lot of work. It was a great experience. I made great friendships. I got to speak Swahili with locals. As a matter of fact, if you want to know a little Swahili, this is great. So a greeting would be jambo, which means like hi. And if I was saying hi to one person, I would say hu jambo. And you might say si jambo. And there's all these greetings that go back and forth. But the funniest words, I'm going to tell you now, and I hope we don't get in trouble in your classroom, they thought the word taco was really, really funny. When you hear taco, you're like, ooh, yum, we'll go to Taco Bell, we'll get tacos, tortillas, and crunchy, and all that other stuff. Well, in Swahili, taco means your butt. So that was really funny, and we kept saying taco all week long and made everybody laugh. And I told you before, jambo means hello. Well, jamba, with an A at the end, means fart. So, and believe me, there was a lot of jamba on the mountain because that pressure way up there, you feel it in your guts. And in the tents at night, you would just hear it all around you. All of us, me, everybody, we just stopped apologizing. Just jamba, me, sorry. That's how it was. So yes, it was fun, but it was an awful lot of work, and I cherish the memory of it. I think more than being there itself. It's just one of those things that sinks in over time, and that is really fun. How much did you raise, and can people still give to your charity? I was able to raise just over $17,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I don't know if people can still donate anymore now that the climb is done, but folks were really, really generous. I had over 300 different donors donate all that money, and it was the most that anybody raised in New England. So I was really proud of that not only did I get to do this amazing thing, climb Kilimanjaro, go to Africa, but also raise a lot of money for people with blood cancer. And so if you ever get the chance to do something that you really want to do and do it for a great cause, don't say no. Just jump after it and go do it. Because I think when you give yourself a test, like a great big mountain, and you get through it, and you work hard to get there, and you do the work it takes, you get there, you climb it, you get through it, and you'll never ever forget how you feel after. And you get to carry that with you forever. You get to keep that forever. It's not like buying some toy or a car or a phone or something like that that's going to go away after a few years. This I get to keep forever and ever.